Midnight Moon. Written by Suzana Thompson. Narrated by Sarah Sampino. Chapter 8. The nurse sent me home, although she could find nothing physically wrong with me. "She's had some kind of a scare," I heard her tell my mother, since there wasn't much privacy in the nurse's office. "But she won't say what happened." This gave me time to come up with a story to tell my mom. If I told her that I was being bullied, she'd demand a name, but that was the only reasonable explanation I could think of. With time running out before her arrival at the school, I decided on something completely ridiculous. It would make me look foolish, but my mom wouldn't pursue it any further. I was careful to appear reluctant to answer her while she was driving me home. "A ghost?" Mom questioned in a dubious tone of voice. I know how crazy it sounds, but the stall door swung open by itself. It would sound even crazier if I told her that I was going to school with a werewolf, so I pretended to believe that there was a ghost in the girls' restroom. "Have you been watching scary movies again?" Mom asked. "You know how your imagination runs away with you." "No, no scary movies. But I've been reading a book that's kind of scary," I admitted sheepishly. It wasn't true, but it would provide a reason for why I had run into the office in a panic. "No more scary books for you either," she said. "Now, are you going to be okay if I leave you by yourself, or would you rather I drop you off at the mall? I have to show a house, but I shouldn't be gone longer than an hour." "I'll be fine at home," I answered. "Sorry about overreacting and making you come get me." "We'll laugh about this someday," she assured me. "Your father will laugh about it today," she added with a fond smile. It was cool how my parents always looked happy when they mentioned each other. That was the kind of relationship I hoped to have with someone special, hopefully in the not-too-distant future. Maybe I would meet somebody in college. Thinking about that made me remember my predictions for Daphne, and I hoped that they would come true. I took out my phone to text her immediately upon entering the house, but it rang before I could do anything. "What was that?" Taylor asked as soon as I answered her call. "Why was Damien half naked in the hall with you?" "He was showing me his shoulder," I explained. "Remember that he was bitten in the attack?" "Oh." She expelled a breath in relief. "It looked like you guys were gonna make out right there in the hall. I'm on a bathroom break, by the way, because I couldn't wait to talk to you. I heard you went home. How'd you manage that?" "There's no bite mark on his shoulder," I exclaimed, ignoring her question about going home. "I don't know which one it was, but there's no bite mark on either one." "Yeah, I'm sure he's healed by now," she said. "But it should have left a mark of some kind, since it was such a vicious attack. He has no scars at all. That's impossible, Taylor. At least for a human." She now understood what I was saying. "He's a werewolf. For real?" "For real," I stated, realizing that I had accepted it as truth. "What are we going to do now?" Taylor questioned. "How are we going to stop him from hurting people?" "It doesn't mean that he'll hurt anyone. I've been talking to someone who knows about werewolves, and I need to tell her about this. You better get back to class. I'll talk to you later." Telling Taylor about Damien kissing me had been my priority when I was trying to get to her locker, but it wasn't important now. "You found an expert? Where?" I couldn't answer her incredulous questions until I spoke to Daphne. "It's a long story. I'll tell you later." "You better," she warned. "I'll call you when I get home." I then texted Daphne and asked if she could talk. She called me a minute later to find out what had happened. I had just finished telling her about Damien's shoulder when I heard the doorbell ring. Thinking that it was probably someone selling something, I peered out the window and started in surprise. "It's him," I whispered to Daphne. "Yeah, it's me," Damien confirmed. "I cut classes too. Let's go do something." "I can't," I called out to him since he already knew that I was there. "My mom will be back soon." "Well, open the door and I'll wait for her with you," he suggested. "Why?" I asked. What should I do? I questioned Daphne in a quieter voice.
You should open the door,
he told me in an amused tone.
And we'll wait for your mom, because I assume that she's the type who wants to meet me before you go out with me.
What's he saying? Daphne asked. Why is he at your house?
Who's on the phone?
Damien questioned.
That doesn't sound like Taylor.
He can hear you, I whispered to Daphne.
I can hear you, too,
Damien reminded me.
Just open the door already. I feel like a stalker standing out here.
You are a stalker, I snapped at him. Hi, Damien. It's Daphne Cross, she spoke in my ear.
Oh, hey, Daphne,
Damien said.
Have you been? I haven't seen you around much this year, but you are in all the genius classes.
Oh, for goodness sake. I unlocked the door in annoyance and pulled it open to hand my phone to him. Talk to her, not through me.
Daphne was my algebra tutor,
he explained amiably, before continuing his conversation with her. He wandered into my house and left the front door open, so I closed it behind him. I followed him into the living room and cautiously sat on the opposite end of the couch from him.
Yeah, I know,
he replied to Daphne. Damien put his feet up on the coffee table and leaned back against the couch.
I was scared before, but now I'm not worried about it.
His gaze shifted to me while he listened to whatever Daphne was saying.
Do we really have to wait for your mom to come home before we go to lunch?
It's too early for lunch, I told him. It's only 9:30.
Breakfast,
he decided, and removed his feet from the coffee table so that he could stand up. I followed him as he invaded my kitchen and raided the fridge like he lived there. What are you doing?
Yes!
he exclaimed with the enthusiasm of someone scoring a touchdown.
Bacon and eggs. You got any bread for toast?
Without waiting for a reply, he left the fridge wide open and rummaged in the cabinets for a frying pan.
I'll talk to you later. Here's Clarissa. I've got to cook.
I accepted the phone back from him as I watched him in bewilderment. Sorry about that, Daphne. He kind of ambushed me. He's very impulsive right now, she explained. It's because it's so close to the full moon. Yeah, he's making himself right at home in my kitchen, I noted, as he laid out some bacon in the frying pan. At least he didn't expect you to cook for him, she remarked. His actions now can tell you a lot about what kind of person he is. He's not a person, I said, uncaring that he could hear me. That's the problem. He's still a person, Daphne rebuked me. He still has human emotions. Anyway, I won't hold you on the phone while you have a guest over. Text me later.
Yeah, I have human emotions,
Damien echoed Daphne's statement.
Like hunger.
Hunger's not an emotion, I informed him as I set my phone down on the kitchen counter. A few quick steps away from the stove brought him directly to me.
Depends on the hunger.
I saw his eyelids closing over his green eyes as he leaned down to kiss me. The bacon began to sizzle, while the heat between us quickly intensified as the kiss became hotter and deeper. Damien suddenly lifted me onto the countertop while he continued to kiss me hungrily. He stopped long enough to yank his shirt off before resuming his thorough exploration of my mouth. I had never gone this far before, but the temptation of his bare skin was too much for me to resist. He groaned at my first tentative touch and pressed closer to me as I ran my hands over his chest and up to his shoulders.
I'm hungry,
he rasped and stepped away from me to turn his attention back to the bacon. I sat there breathing heavily and watched him in stunned frustration as he flipped the bacon over with a fork. The sound of the front door opening prompted me to hop down from the counter. Put your shirt on, I hissed, and hurried from the kitchen. Mom, I greeted her. I smell bacon, she said with a smile.
Ask her how many eggs she wants,
Damien called out loudly. A friend came over, I said in answer to her quizzical look. We entered the kitchen to see a still shirtless Damien holding a carton of eggs.
Scrambled? Over easy? What's your preference?
Mom, this is Damien Stark. I threw an angry glare at him as I introduced him to her. Do you always remove your shirt when you cook? She had spotted it on the floor and turned a speculative look on me while she questioned him.
I got hot,
He answered. Her lips twitched with a repressed smile as she glanced at his upper body. Clearly.
How many eggs do you want?
Damien inquired again. I'll make the eggs. You put your shirt on, she told him.
Okay,
He agreed.
I'll have scrambled, please.
She took over the cooking while I resignedly grabbed more plates out of the cabinet and made the toast. I hoped that Damien wouldn't say anything crazy in front of her. Why aren't you in school? Mom asked him.
I cut class so that I could take Clarissa out to lunch, but she said it was too early. We're going out to dinner tonight anyway, he explained. If you say it's okay, he added.
Clarissa is free to make her own decisions about that, she said. We'd never discussed dating before, so I hadn't known her view on it. I was glad to know that she had faith in my judgment. If only I could trust myself as much as she trusted me. I just passionately made out with Damien after finding out that he's a werewolf. Why didn't my newly acquired psychic abilities work where he was concerned? All kinds of danger signals should have been firing in my brain every time I got near him, but instead, I forgot all about the threat he posed. I watched him as he ate bacon and eggs while he chatted with Mom about his family. He had twin 12-year-old sisters, which was something that I hadn't known about him. There wasn't much that I did know about him, beyond what I had seen at school. I now learned that his dad was a dentist, and that his mom was a teacher at an elementary school. I have to get back to work now, Mom said after we finished eating. It was nice to meet you, Damien, but it's time for you to leave. I'm sure that your parents wouldn't appreciate me allowing you to skip school at my house.
Okay, I'm gonna go home and take a nap anyway. Thanks for breakfast. I'll pick you up at 6, Clarissa. Think about where you want to go eat and let me know.
At this point, I suspected that food was his main priority, so I went ahead with the date. I texted Daphne after Damien and my mom left. She texted back that she would call me later, and it made me remember that she had a lot more than werewolves to deal with. Fortunately, she called me before Taylor did, so I was able to ask her permission to reveal the source of my werewolf knowledge. I also explained the odd situation with Bryce to her, and that Taylor was going out with him tonight. Okay, she agreed, but don't tell anyone else. I won't, I promised. So, tell me what happened with Damien, she urged. She was therefore the first person to know that he had kissed me. Daphne laughed at the part where he had ditched me for the irresistible temptation of bacon. I wouldn't have normally revealed so much, but I was very confused by his actions. Once Alex and I started, I was always the one who had to put the brakes on, or he would have kept going. Damien is very impulsive right now, Daphne explained, which means that he's also easily distracted by anything that he wants. Remember what my grandma's friend said about their emotions being more intense? Yeah, he has an intense desire for food, I laughingly said. Maybe I should pick a steak place for dinner to make sure he gets enough to eat. You're going out with him tonight? Daphne questioned sharply. Now that I had joined her in regarding the situation as funny, I didn't know why her attitude had abruptly changed. Yeah, he's picking me up at 6. Maybe you shouldn't go, she told me. He'll be under the influence of the moon at night. But the full moon isn't until tomorrow night. I had looked up this information and treated it with more importance than my homework, checking several sources to make sure that it was correct. Do you think he'll change early? Probably not, she said. But the influence of the moon on his emotions will probably be very strong tonight. That might not be the best time for you to be around him. He seems not to be fighting this werewolf thing at all. He's aware of turning into one, but he said that he's okay with it. So he doesn't have any negative emotions. Maybe that's why I'm not scared of him, I reasoned. I had that freak out this morning at school, but now I'm over it. That's what worries me. Both of you should be scared about what's happening. This is a very big deal, Clarissa. I had the same opinion about her attitude about her cancer. If it were me, I'd be terrified. The way she was handling the whole thing amazed me, but I couldn't think of a way to tell her that without emphasizing the severity of her situation. I know, and I won't go anywhere near him tomorrow, believe me. We'll be in a public place tonight, so I think it'll be safe. Taylor had no such concerns about my date, even after I told her everything that Daphne had said. I don't think he's dangerous at all. We've been going to school with him for almost 4 years, so we would have heard about it if he had a bad temper. And he didn't try to go too far with you after he kissed you, so that's a good sign. Wow, he kissed you. That part was great, I had to admit. The memory of touching his bare skin while he kissed me gave me an illicit thrill, and I quickly changed the subject. I wanted to ask you something about Bryce. Taylor listened while I presented all my thoughts on him, including my initial suspicions that he might be the wolf that bit Damien. He wasn't even here then, she defended him. And he's so nice. I don't see him being a murderer. I then described his strange reaction to Kristen on his first day at our school, but Taylor interpreted it in a different way than I did. He was mad at how those guys were looking at her. Bryce respects girls, and he's a gentleman. That's why he wanted to cover her up and gave her his hoodie. But don't you think it was weird how she listened to him when she wouldn't listen to the teacher? I pressed. He's a hot guy, so she was trying to get him to like her, Taylor said. Too bad for her that Bryce likes me, and Damien likes you. She'll have to scheme to get someone else. Just be careful tonight, I pleaded. You don't really know Bryce that well. I took a shower and did my hair and makeup, but I dressed casual in jeans and a t-shirt with a jacket thrown over it. The weather was fairly mild for that time of year, but still chilly, especially in the evening. Damien was dressed the same way, minus the jacket. Aren't you cold? I inquired as we walked toward his car in my driveway. No, the weather's perfect. He smiled happily at me as we got into his car. Where do you want to go? I named one of the chain restaurants and buckled my seatbelt. Damien didn't put his on before turning on the car and pulling out of my driveway. He drove to a spot in the metro parks that was deserted due to the cold weather, and it already getting dark at this time of year, shortly after 6. I want to see the moon, Damien explained, before I could voice a protest. So much for the safety of a public place, I thought, regretting not listening to Daphne. You're wearing perfume, he stated casually. It doesn't mask your natural scent, though. My stomach flip-flopped as his voice turned low and rough as he spoke that second sentence. His mouth was plundering mine in a hot kiss before I could blink. He moaned as his tongue clashed with mine, while I made helpless noises in a failed attempt to speak. I was breathless by the time he released my mouth and nuzzled my neck, while his hands slipped under my shirt. Food, I gasped. You smell so good. He spoke huskily into my neck, before pulling my shirt up and burying his face in my bosom. I still had my jacket on, which prevented him from removing my shirt entirely, but that didn't seem to be slowing him down. Unfortunately, there was no smell of bacon to distract him this time. I trembled as I felt his breath fan over my bare flesh, and his tongue lick the skin exposed at the top of my bra. Stop, I breathed. His tongue moved to the swell of my other breast, and I couldn't suppress a moan. Love that sound, he told me. I want to hear it again. I was torn between wanting more and needing to stop, but I pushed him away. Daphne said that you can control your impulses if you want to. Daphne, he repeated, as his intense gaze softened. Sweet girl. She helped me with math, made it easy to understand. She should be a teacher. Yes, I agreed in relief that I was able to distract him from making out. Hopefully she'll get better. His expression became deeply troubled. Why? What's wrong with her? She's sick, but I'm not supposed to tell anyone. She wants to wait until— Where is she? Damien demanded. He now looked so intimidating that my long-absent fear finally returned. Calm down.
Where?
I jumped at his loud bark and meekly told him the name of the hospital.
Put on your seatbelt,
he ordered, before revving the engine and speeding down the empty road. The tension rolled off of him as he stared out the windshield and ignored me. He waited impatiently at red lights and ignored the speed limit until he arrived back at my house.
Sorry about dinner,
he growled. Realizing that he was dumping me without actually taking me out on the date he had promised, I angrily got out of his car and slammed the door shut. He backed out of my driveway and took off without even glancing at me again. I sighed and took out my phone to text a warning and an apology to Daphne. Then I thought uneasily about Taylor and hoped that her date with Bryce was normal.